And then you also talk about how Graph, in a different interview, talk about how Graph isn't badass in comparison to the real life struggles that people face, essentially just to avoid getting fucked with. And it reminded me of like there's this like there was like this Jewish combat league, and the initials were like ZOB, and it meant something in Hebrew, but I don't remember what it stood for. And basically, it was like these Jews who got pushed into this ghetto, and they knew that at any moment like the Nazis were going to come in and exterminate them, so they started like accumulating weapons, but like super guerrilla tactics. They would just like smuggle it in through trash cans and just really crazy ways. And then they vacated all the houses that were at the entrance. There's only one entrance to the ghetto, so that when the Nazis did come to liquidate them, like the first like 10 rows of houses would wait until they were right in the middle and just like light them up and stuff like that. And like you said, Graph in comparison to these kind of things is nothing in terms of like the badassery sense. And I was just thinking what you were thinking when you said that. I know it was a minute ago, but
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that over time, like, I've thought more about this, and I wouldn't take back having said that. But it's interesting that in certain circumstances, we assume that, like, we're the grimy person in the room as a graffiti writer. Like, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm like the criminal dude. Like, I kind of have changed my opinion on that to, like, if I'm in like a meeting with business people, politicians, anybody, I just paint on shit, man. You know what I mean? And I try and keep that in the front of my mind now. That, like, whatever conflict of interest people might see, I just paint on stuff. As like from an ethical point of view, morally, I feel like I'm on the right side of things
mm-hmm.
most of the time. And you might be sitting there with a business meeting with someone that wants to get art off you, and they're a legitimate gangster. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know, like, you don't know, but I kind of don't. I just look at it like I'm painting on stuff. If I have a lot of time and it's illegal, I'll paint a mural or something. I don't. I'm kind of into like normalizing it, I guess, in a
Mm-hmm.
sense. And like, I think about like when I was a kid, I got in trouble for graffiti and weed. Like, these things will ruin your life, and these are $1 billion industries at this point. Not that long later, and I think there's a lot to be said for the people that just blew weed smoke on the street and got arrested for it, or grew it and got arrested for it. Like, eventually, it's like, what are you guys mad at? You know what I mean? Like, you kind of have to believe that you're not doing anything wrong, and no matter what people tell you, if you're not doing anything wrong, you owe it to yourself to keep your head up and not like think like that. I know it's a slightly different question, like a different answer to your question,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of where my thought went from that last thought.
No, it's interesting you say how normalizing it is kind of what I feel like. You look less suspect if you, in your mind, you feel like you're supposed to be in that situation, supposed to walk into that lot, or like you normalize it, thinking it's not like a criminal activity, or thinking you're not going to get arrested or caught. You're actually trying to produce something from your heart, you know? And is that how you try to paint? Is that
Yeah.
you think nothing's really wrong?
Well, I mean, if I'm doing something that requires paranoia, I'll indulge.
Yeah.
But I think just in terms of intention, yeah, I think this is something that's like my favorite part of graffiti. I think is that it's really about making your environment malleable, and in a really interesting way. It's how we kind of communicate with each other. I think it's like the way I've met a lot of my friends is through graffiti, and you know something about somebody from it. You know that they also look at the world as not being like solidly set in place. That laws are not like definitive, And then also about like, when I look at people's graffiti, I can see like what goes on in their brain almost, you see like some like letter connections, and you kind of, I think if I was choosing friends, I would want to know like who's able to subvert things repeatedly successfully and get away with it, and has cool looking thoughts. And there you go. Then we have a whole map of everybody in our surroundings that is like on that vibration. So I always appreciate it for that.